Hello and good morning friends, welcome to the CEC-UGC live lecture. Dear friends, as you know that we are carrying a series on history of English literature, and so far 25 lectures have been conducted for you and all the lectures are uploaded for you on YouTube. Taking the series forward, today we would be talking on the English stage in 1950s, and for this very discussion on the topic we have once again with us in our studios Professor Bhim Singh Dahiya. Professor Bhim Singh Dahiya is a formerly Vice Chancellor of Kurukshetra University, and we would like to tell you all that he has authored numerous books on history of English literature. So we believe that he is the most appropriate person to talk on the entire series. So without wasting any time, I would like to welcome our guest, Professor Bhim Singh Dahiya. Professor Dahiya, welcome to the EduSet lecture.
Thank you. Well, we shall discuss today in this lecture the new theatre which came up in the 1950s, and it popularly came to be called new theatre. In a way, every now and then, whenever something new starts, they call themselves new, rightly so. So, after the social drama of the early 20th century, like Bernard Shaw, Galsworthy, these were the leading dramatists of that period after World War I. And that drama came to be called social drama. Bernard Shaw was well known as a socialist, in fact. He had political interests. So had Galsworthy. So both were committed socialists, and they wanted to promote that ideology through their drama, through their plays. So the plays that they created, that they designed for the stage, came with a clear message about their socialism. So this was between the two wars, after World War I and before World War II. So during that period, these two dramatists dominated the English stage, and they wrote social dramas. For example, Bernard Shaw wrote Widowers' Houses, The Arms and the Man, Mrs. Warren's Profession, The Doctor's Dilemma, and St. John. All very different from each other in a way, but at the same time all rooted in the social context of the age, whichever it is. So that is common, and that is his core or central emphasis. Widowers' Houses, the title itself explains widow, widower, male without wife is a widower, whose wife is no longer there, whose wife is dead. So what happens in the houses of such people? How do they pass time? What do they do? What kind of life is that? So to bring out in public the internal factors governing the lives of the widowers, Bernard Shaw wrote this play. Very interesting. This was in 1892, turn of the century, before World War I. Then came Arms and the Man, that is 1894. This is about war. and the clear message is anti-war, against the war, because the hero in Arms and the Man is a comic hero. He ridicules the bravado of the soldier, which is generally highlighted, which is generally praised and idealized. So here there is no idealization, it is just the opposite. He puts it upside down and makes fun of the general bravado which the soldier and then the public admiring him uphold. That is Arms and the Man, a very interesting comedy. It was a very successful comedy. On the stage, it worked very well, and the play would go on and on for days and then weeks together. Well, similarly, then after the turn of the century, in the beginning of the 20th, 1906, Shaw wrote another interesting play, Mrs. Warren's Profession. Shaw was a very prolific writer, and he hardly left untouched any, you say, or no aspect of social life. He touched upon every aspect, and he made a play out of that. He had a knack for it. Not a very great playwright, I would say, like Shakespeare or Sophocles. But for his own time, he was the right dramatist, and a very popular one at that. Mrs. Warren's Profession actually is that she is a prostitute. But look at that. Bernard Shaw writes about prostitution as a profession and trying to give it some sort of respectability. At least she would like to consider it that way. If other people are earning by doing this, that and that, why not this one? So the question of morality is set aside, and the question of wages, question of making your livelihood, that becomes central. So that is what he does in Mrs. Warren's Profession, 1902. And similarly, the doctor's dilemma. Well, doctors always have a dilemma whether to fleece the patient or not to fleece, whether to be charitable or to be businesslike. So these dilemmas are always there before the doctor. And then the attitude to the patient and to the problem will vary from doctor to doctor. There are all kinds. There are those who would fleece, whatever be your position, whether you can afford it or not. There are others who will be considerate, humane, so they wouldn't bother about their charges so much as about doing the job well. So in doctor's dilemma, you get to know this, what kind of problem a doctor faces and how different people or different doctors will resolve it in their different ways. Then Saint John is Shaw's most famous play. This is the best known play by Bernard Shaw. Saint John is history also. Then it becomes a legend, and then it becomes a myth. Well, this girl of just about 16 or 17 in France, when her country was being invaded, and invaded repeatedly, then she comes to save her people. And she fights and wins the war for her country. So Joan of Arc, she was called Joan of Arc. People thought she was inspired. There was some spirit working in her. It is not the girl herself. It is some supernatural power which enters her and makes her do these wonders. And all alone she can defeat armies and say, won the war for her country. So it is semi-historical, semi-legendary, and it became a successful myth, a mythical figure. And because of her extraordinary qualities, spiritual also, she was then made a saint. So came to be known as Saint Joan. So Bernard Shaw wrote a very successful, very effective play on that story of Saint John. And in fact, after his play, the figure became universal. People got to know all over the world, wherever English is spoken, studied, which it is done all over the world. So Bernard Shaw, in a way, made something local as universal. Earlier than that, outside of Europe, nothing much was known about her. But then after this, the whole world knew about Saint John. So this is one important play of the period. Second is Galsworthy. I am mentioning Shaw and Galsworthy as a background because they were not the playwrights of the 50s. They were playwrights of the period between the wars. So their role is important because the theatre of the 50s, called the New Theatre, that came in reaction to this kind of drama. Drama that Bernard Shaw and Galsworthy wrote. This drama was social drama, directly relevant to social life, directly related to social relations among different people, within the family, outside the family. So they focused on that. And as a reaction to this, the new theatre of the 1950s came out to be very radical, very irreverent to all these issues of social importance or significance. The second playwright of the period, as I said, of the social drama was John Galsworthy. Galsworthy also wrote a number of plays. Like Shaw, he was also very prolific. But I will mention just the important ones. He is most popularly known. The best known play is Strife, his representative, Strife, strife, struggle, some sort of, battling of something. That is called Strife. This came out in 1909. And then the Skin Game, that is a later play, 1920. The Eldest Son, 1912. Justice is 1910. Strife, 1909. Justice, 1910. These are two early plays. The later plays are The Eldest Son and The Skin Game. So, the common thing between Galsworthy and Bernard Shaw is that both wrote social plays, focusing on the social issues. Of course, you cannot separate social issues from the political. So, that is why a tinge of the political is always there in the plays of Bernard Shaw as well as Galsworthy. So, the better thing would be to call these plays socio-political. So, socio-political issues of the time, just like the historian. So, in a way, there is the historical dimension also to this type of social drama. Now, in reaction to this drama, which was serious, which was purposeful, which was relevant, which had a commitment to particular ideology, socio-political. Now, all this was rejected by the new theatre of the 1950s. And they went to issues of existence. They said what Shaw and Galsworthy wrote, that gets restricted to the privileged people, to the middle class, people who have no problem with their earnings, with their living. So, they are doing their professions, they are earning comfortably, and they are living a certain level of civilized life. Now, the new dramatists of the 1950s, they were in a way more radical, and they thought that behind the middle class and around the middle class and under the middle class, there is life, there are people who are also living in the same society, but nobody cares for them. Nobody takes note of their problems, their miseries, their anguish. So, these dramatists of the 1950s, they were radical in this way. They had a more serious political commitment to bringing to light the life of the poorest of the poor, the people who are living in the ghettos, people who are living in the ditches, just like garbage. It is these people, and it is their life, their existence in fact. They wouldn't prefer to call it life. There is no life. It's existence. Just that is why one of the places live like pigs. So their life is no better than those of pigs. So it is this kind of focus on the existentialist aspect of life, not on the civilized, not on the cultured, not on the social, not on the political, but the very struggle for existence, Darwinian concern, struggle for existence and survival of the fittest. So here are people who are struggling to survive sorry, and are unable to survive because they have not means enough to do that. So in a way it is ultra radical kind of drama that came out in the 1950s. And who were these people? A long list of dramatists. We can't cover them all, but we will make mention of these playwrights and their representative plays, at least one or two each. The first one that comes to mind and who became representative figure of the 1950s was John Osborne. John Osborne wrote one play which made the whole generation popular and famous. That was Look Back in Anger. It was published in 1957, but was staged in 1956, October. So Look Back in Anger became representative because it explains the whole outlook, philosophy of the generation. They are angry young men. If you remember, around the same time, in cinema, there came a wave of angry young men. Here also in Bollywood, Amitabh Bachchan represented that. He started his career as an angry young man. So that was the phase in theatre, in cinema. The focus was on the angry young man. Now, why was he angry? He was angry because the social drama preceding and the life preceding theirs, life between the wars, they were angry because they thought during this period much was being covered, much was being pushed under the carpet, much was being kept hidden from the eyes of the young people, and they were not being shown the truth of life, the bare bones of existence which they wanted to know. hence their anger. Anger against the older generation, anger against their predecessors, anger against their parents, because they wanted to directly address the issues of existence, hence angry young men. So it was this kind of context in which these playwrights of the 1950s wrote their plays. And Osborne's, John Osborne's, Look Back in Anger, staged in 1956, published in 1957, became the representative piece of the period and the most popular at that. And the second, which was actually not second, it was equally and in some quarters more popular, that was by Samuel Beckett. Samuel Beckett brought European influence from Paris, from Frankfurt, Germany and France, in Europe in literature as well as otherwise. These two countries had been leading all innovations, literary as well as non-literary. They came up in these two countries. So this new drama also, this was of French origin. And Samuel Beckett, originally an Irishman, but he lived most part of his life in Paris and therefore came to be known as a Parisian dramatist, representing the new wave in the theatre. So, Waiting for Godot, very popular play, very popular on the stage, even in the classroom today also it is taught and read by hundreds and thousands of students. And in a way it's a satire on the religious minded, people who believe in God. So Godot is a distorted form of God. Here there are 4 characters or 3. They are just standing on the roadside, just as people are standing waiting for the bus. So they are standing there, not even talking to each other. But then each one of them, whenever they are asked, what are they doing there? What are you waiting for? The answer is waiting for Godot. Now, who is Godot? Where from would Godot come? And when? No one knows. And therefore, wait goes on unlimited. So let us not make our conversation unlimited. I stop for a while. Thank you. Well, to resume the story of the new theatre, which came up in the 1950s, the post-war, post-World War II theatre, and it came to be called new, as I explained, because it was in reaction to the older drama, older theatre, which was of Bernard Shaw and Galsworthy. Social drama, social issues. These dramatists reacted. They said, we know all this. This is familiar stuff which we live, which we see every day. We want something new on the stage. The part of life, the issues of life which do not normally come to the public, because in the public domain only the social issues or political issues, not the personal and not the class, because you want to keep them out of sight. You feel either ashamed of showing that, or if you belong to the other side, you don't want to look at it. It is better overlooked. Those who are actually involved and living that wretched life, they are ashamed of showing it. So either way, it gets ignored, either overlooked or not shown, comes to the same thing. So these dramatists of the 1950s, they decided that we will bring it out, we will make it public, we will show to the people what has not been shown, but is still a reality. There are people, poorest of the poor, who are living a wretched life, who are struggling for subsistence and struggling for existence itself. So, whatever unpleasantness it may create in certain quarters of society, we must bring it out. That's how they got determined. And as I said, the very first play, which became the representative play of the period, 1950s, that explains it all. Look back in anger. This was the most popular play of the time, because it explains all that they wanted to say. They are looking back in anger because the back was the life represented by Bernard Shaw Galsworthy, social drama. And these dramatists, new ones, they felt that our older, respectable dramatists kept out of stage a good deal, which they thought was not presentable, which they thought was beneath their dignity. So this poor life, the struggle for existence, This for the first time was brought on stage by these dramatists of the 50s. And the first, as I said, was John Osborne, who wrote this Look Back in Anger, 1956 presentation, 1957 publication. Second was Samuel Beckett, Waiting for Godot. This actually was done earlier, 1953. But it took time because it was in Paris to begin with. So it took quite some time to become popular in England. In Paris it was, even before Look Back in Anger. And in fact, Osborne learns and borrows a good deal from the Parisian theatre, from Samuel Beckett. So Waiting for Godot, as I said, is a satire on people who keep waiting for God, but God never comes. So they create a figure, a god like Godot, and there are three people waiting, talking to each other, and each tell they are waiting for Godot. Who is Godot? Where from would it come? When would it come? No one knows. They don't know anything. But they are still waiting. A futile exercise, life wasted in futility. This is what Beckett wants to show. That most of us waste our lives for something which is not there. We just keep waiting for Godot, and Godot would never come. So, very interesting play, 1953. Then John Arden, another playwright. John Osborne, then Samuel Beckett, third one now, John Arden. John Arden also wrote a very provocative play. I am just taking up one each representative. Otherwise, each one of them wrote several plays, large number. So you can't really discuss them all. So to mention all these dramatists, we are taking up one representative piece of each. So John Arden's representative play is Live Like Pig, 1958. So a very pinching title. Who is he addressing? He is addressing people who are living like pigs. He says, your life is no better. Are you happy with it? Are you contented? If not, why don't you rebel against it? Why don't you revolt against it? That actually is the message in the play. But he doesn't say it directly. Indirectly, it is very much there, and there with a punch. So live like pig, because this will pinch you, this will hurt you, and that is precisely the purpose of the play, to hurt you into thinking about your own position and reacting to it, reacting against it, and then do something to rectify that position. So very effective play again, like Look Back in Anger and Waiting for Godot. Live Like Pigs, next year 1958, was equally effective. So you can see how these playwrights were coming out with new and newer ways of stirring the society, making people think, compelling them to look critically to their own life. What kind of life are you living? Does it never occur to you that you are living like pigs, a wretched life? That is how these plays effected their message, and they were very successful. So, John Arden's Live Like Pig, equally successful. Next comes Arnold Wesker. Arnold Wesker made a comedy, Chips with Everything, 1962. This is the title of the play, Chips with Everything. Well, this conveys a message. When you are eating, there also you have chips with everything, just accompanying. It is there always and yet not very important. It is just there. It is also there. That is the emphasis. And that is what Arnold Wesker wants to convey, that is the life of the common people. They are like chips. They are there everywhere and yet they are not important. Then comes Harold Pinter, who is more popular with the universities because his play is generally prescribed in the reading curriculum for MA. The play most famous of his is The Birthday Party, again 1957. The birthday party. So that is how they worked. Pick up one of the general practices of the society of the time, focus on that one particular practice item, and through that expose what is the weakness in that culture, in that civilization, what is missing. So to make them aware of what they are missing and thereby effect a correction. So it was a play with a purpose, theatre with a goal. So no less than Bernard Shaw and Galsworthy, they too have it. Here, of course, they are going down below in the lower regions of life. That is the difference, because they thought that the social life that Shaw and Galsworthy presented on the stage left out a good deal. They presented the pleasing part, at least the tolerable part. Even when they exposed humorously, comically, they didn't hit hard enough So, that is the difference between them and the new theatre of the 1950s. The new theatre first wanted to bring out what was left out, the lowermost level of life. Secondly, they wanted to hit hard where the attempt has been made to soften it by the earlier elder dramatists. So, that is what they did. In the birthday party also, very subtly, very ironically, Pinter exposes the shame involved in this middle class way of life, how certain things remain behind the curtain, and how life is reduced into a sort of show like the birthday party. Because in birthday party you see the spectacle, you see the external, you see the outer layers of life. You never get to see the interior, the real. So, these writers of the 1950s, they focused on this life under the carpet, life which was considered unpleasant, life which was considered unpresentable. So, they focused on that. It may be unpleasant, it may be hard to bear for some people, it may even be ugly to a certain class, but they were determined to bring it out, to insist that this too is a part of life, and in fact it constitutes greater part of life, because it involves greater number of people who are living that wretched life. So, that is how they brought it out. Pinter also did it in the birthday party 1957. Yet another dramatist was Joe Alton. Joe Alton's representative play is very significant. The very title is Loot. So, it is loot by certain section of society exploiting the rest, the privileged ones, the rich ones. They exploit the unprivileged, they exploit the needy, they, you see, have pleasure at the cost of these poor people. So, this is what he brings out in Loot, Joe Alton. So, the divide between the rich and the poor and the exploitation involved in it. So, very effectively and very boldly it is brought out in this play, The Loot, 1966. Yet another playwright was Tom Stoppard. So, you have a long list of playwrights of the 1950s, the new theatre. So, you have these new faces. coming out with new and newer forms of drama. So Tom Stoppard wrote another interesting play. Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead. You remember? Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are the friends of Hamlet. And these friends are killed during the play, but nobody takes note of them because the entire focus is on the hero, on Hamlet, his life. So the side show of these minor characters that remains out of focus. And that doesn't get attention. So that is why Stoppard wrote this play, to focus on the minor, to focus on the sideshow in great tragedies. So Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, the friends of Hamlet, are dead in 1967 play. He wants to show that at least the announcement that they are dead, only the announcement comes, because their lives are of no value compared to that of Hamlet, and therefore ignored, not even noticed, unnoticed. Similarly, Edward Bond wrote a play called Lear. Look at it. Stoppard wrote on the minor characters of Hamlet. Here Edward Bond is writing on the King Lear, but he makes it just Lear. And there lies the punch. There lies the point. Because when you see the play, by the end of the play he becomes just Lear. No pomp and show, no King Lear. He is a beggar on the heath, all naked, in the literal and in the metaphoric sense of the word. So this is what Edward Bond shows. So they are semi-literary plays. So this theatre in a way relates you to the tradition, relates you to history, and wants to show you the continuity. What was and what is not without a link. The link may be ironic, the link may be satirical, the link may be high and low, but it is not without a link. The two have to be related, and the two have to be looked into that relationship between them. You have to put them together, see them side by side. So that is what Edward Bond is doing. And the last one here is Carol Churchill. She is alive, she is still writing, and she is a lady playwright, very bold one. She wrote a play on the President of America and the Prime Minister of England. You remember Bush and his counterpart in England, John something. So very mischievously she shows them homos in that relationship, gay relationship with each other. But that's a political satire. She is a political dramatist and a very hard-hitting satirist. She is not afraid of anyone. She wrote this play when both were in power, and hard-hitting play at that. So, but she is better known by a famous play, Cloud 9, which also was made a movie, very famous movie of Hollywood, Cloud 9, 1979 it came out. So that is the story of the new theatre, beginning with 1950s and ending with the end of the century. So completing the 20th. Thank you.
With this note, thank you, sir. Thank you so very much for giving us a very, very vivacious session. Dear friends, we believe that you have liked today's lecture. If you want to give your feedback for this lecture, then you can mail us at info.cc@nic.in, and all the lectures pertaining to the series History of English Literature are there for you on YouTube. So, dear friends, we would be meeting again very soon and would be discussing on another topic under the series. Till then, take care. Goodbye. Thank you, sir. Thank you so very much.